12 U-turns deserves one explanation: serial incompetence. Those weren't my words. They were Keir Starmer's, posted on Twitter during Boris Johnson's chaotic premiership. A moment of moral clarity when Starmer knew exactly what policy reversals revealed about leadership. He understood that constant U-turns weren't strategic flexibility. They were fundamental failure. That tweet just came back to destroy him. Because Starmer didn't stop at 12 U-turns, he went to 13. I watched the announcement come through yesterday afternoon. Digital identity cards, the policy Starmer had defended for months as essential to Britain's future, was being quietly shelved. No grand press conference, no ministerial statement to Parliament, just a brief memo leaked to friendly journalists, hoping nobody would notice the Prime Minister abandoning yet another flagship policy. But everyone noticed, because this wasn't just another policy adjustment. This was the 13th major reversal since Starmer took office. The 13th time he'd announced something as critical, defended it publicly, then abandoned it when opposition grew too loud. And his own words from the Boris Johnson era were immediately weaponized against him across every platform. Serial incompetence, that's what Starmer called 12 U-turns. What does 13 make you? The digital identity story reveals everything wrong with this government. Months ago, Starmer defended mandatory digital ID cards as revolutionary modernization. He claimed they would streamline services, reduce fraud, bring Britain into the digital age. His ministers briefed journalists this was non-negotiable policy that would define his legacy. But then reality arrived. Privacy advocates raised alarm about surveillance overreach. Technology experts questioned feasibility. And crucially, the public hated it. Polling showed overwhelming opposition. Starmer's response: complete capitulation. The policy that was supposedly essential was suddenly optional, then under review, then dead, abandoned. Another U-turn. Let me count them for you. 13 major policy reversals in less than 18 months. Winter fuel payments. Promised restoration. Cut immediately. Partially restored after backlash. Family farm inheritance tax, created rural revolt, substantially modified within weeks, personal independence payment reforms, proposed cuts to disability benefits, quietly shelved, two-child benefit cap, hinted he'd lift it, defended keeping it, now under review again, national grooming gangs inquiry, refused for months, reversed when pressure became overwhelming, trial by jury reforms, legal profession revolted, plans abandoned, business rates overhaul, promised reform reversed after hospitality industry complaints, planning reform, bold announcements about green belt building, significant backtracking, green energy commitments, ambitious targets, quietly watered down, NHS reorganization, major changes proposed, plans substantially altered, education funding changes, generated opposition, reversed, public sector pay, initial tough stance, multiple U-turns as strikes mounted, and 13, digital identity cards, from essential to completely abandoned. Each reversal follows the same pattern: bold announcement with absolute certainty, public defense claiming critics don't understand, growing opposition, defensive anger, then quiet retreat, hoping nobody notices the pattern. But everyone notices the pattern, especially Starmer's own ministers. The most damaging revelation came through political journalists yesterday. Multiple senior Labour ministers, speaking anonymously, assessed Starmer's chances of surviving until the next election at 50-50 at best. Not opposition MPs making partisan attacks. His own government, his own cabinet colleagues, publicly doubting whether their leader can last. That assessment is devastating. Prime ministers can survive opposition attacks. They can weather media criticism. They can even handle low polling numbers if their party stands behind them. But when your own ministers start briefing journalists that you probably won't make it, your authority is finished. The briefings revealed extraordinary chaos inside government. Ministers complaining that Starmer announces policies without proper consultation. Civil servants expressing frustration that directives change weekly. Special advisors admitting they have no idea what the Prime Minister actually believes. The machinery of government grinding to halt because nobody knows which policies will survive contact with public opinion. One minister described the process: we propose something, the PM approves it, we announce it, opposition emerges, the PM panics, we reverse course, it's governance by crisis. Another was more damning: he has no principles. Everything depends on polls, focus groups, political convenience. There's nothing he won't abandon if it becomes difficult. These aren't opposition politicians making partisan attacks. These are Starmer's own people, the ministers he appointed, the colleagues who campaigned with him, now openly questioning whether he has any idea what he's doing. The 50-50 assessment particularly stings because it's not about losing an election. It's about whether he'll even make it to the next election without being forced out by his own party. Labour MPs are doing the math. They're watching polling numbers collapse. They're seeing the U-turns destroy credibility. And they're wondering whether changing leader before the election might be better than going into campaign with Starmer. That's the political death spiral. When your own side starts calculating whether you're electoral liability rather than asset, your position becomes untenable. And through it all, that tweet haunts him. 12 U-turns deserves one explanation: serial incompetence. The Conservative opposition has turned it into brutal attack line. Every time Starmer stands at the dispatch box, someone quotes his own words back at him. Every interview includes journalists asking how 13 U-turns differs from the 12 he once condemned. Every social media post about new reversal includes screenshot of that tweet. Starmer has no good answer. He tries claiming circumstances are different. He insists his reversals are responsive government, while Boris's were incompetence. He suggests that changing policy based on evidence is actually strength, not weakness. But nobody's buying it. Because the pattern is identical to what he criticized. Announce policy, defend it, face opposition, reverse course, pretend it never happened, then announce next policy that will probably also be reversed. The digital ID reversal particularly undermines credibility because of how forcefully he defended it. Multiple media appearances, opinion pieces, ministerial speeches, government planning, money allocated for development. Then it was all abandoned. Wasted preparation, wasted political capital, wasted credibility. Why? Because polls were bad, because focus groups expressed concern. Not because the policy was wrong on merits, because it was politically inconvenient. That's what separates governance from politics. Governance means making difficult decisions and standing by them when you believe they're right. Politics means making popular decisions and abandoning them when they become unpopular. Starmer has proven he's a politician, not a governor. The 13 U-turns reveal someone who treats principles as suggestions. Someone who adopts positions based on what sounds good rather than what he actually believes. Someone who lacks the courage to defend difficult choices against opposition. His own backbenchers are starting to say it openly. One Labour MP told journalists, "We elected him because we thought he'd be strong enough to make tough choices and stick with them." Instead, he makes tough-sounding announcements, then immediately backs down the moment anyone pushes back. That's not leadership, that's cowardice. Another was even more brutal. The problem isn't that he makes mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. The problem is he won't admit them or learn from them. He just pretends the previous position never existed and expects us all to forget. But voters don't forget. They remember every broken promise, every abandoned commitment. The comparison to Boris Johnson has become inescapable. Starmer spent years as the anti-Boris, the serious prosecutor versus the buffoon, the man of principle versus the opportunist. But 13 U-turns later, the differences look superficial. Both change positions based on political convenience. Both abandon unpopular policies. Both govern by poll rather than principle. The main difference is Boris had charisma to distract from chaos. Starmer has only earnest seriousness that makes the chaos more embarrassing. And that tweet remains perfect encapsulation. 12 U-turns deserves one explanation: serial incompetence. Starmer wrote those words thinking they applied to his opponents. He never imagined they'd become his own epitaph. He never considered that his certainty about others' failures might become mirror reflecting his own. But that's exactly what happened. The man who condemned 12 U-turns has now committed 13. The prosecutor, who built his career on holding others accountable, is being judged by standards he himself established. And he's being found guilty by his own evidence. The political consequences are mounting. Labour's polling lead has collapsed. Starmer's personal approval ratings have fallen below Boris Johnson's worst numbers. Key demographics that supported Labour in the last election are drifting away. Donors are expressing concern, MPs are getting nervous about their seats, and inside Downing Street, according to those anonymous ministerial briefings, there's growing acceptance that this might be unsustainable. You can't govern effectively when your own cabinet doubts you'll survive. You can't implement policy when everyone knows it might be reversed next week. You can't lead a party when backbenchers openly question your competence. The digital ID reversal might be remembered as the moment it became irreversible. Not because it was the most significant U-turn, but because it was the 13th. The one that took Starmer past the number he himself had condemned. The one that made his own words inescapable. Some political damage can be recovered from. Leaders can rebuild trust after mistakes. Governments can restore credibility after setbacks. But when you've condemned the exact behavior you're now exhibiting, when your own ministers doubt you'll survive, when your defining criticism of opponents has become your defining characteristic, recovery becomes nearly impossible. Starmer set the standard. 12 U-turns equals serial incompetence. He's now at 13. By his own definition, he's worse than the government he replaced. By his own measure, he's failed the leadership test he created. The tragedy is Starmer probably doesn't understand what he's done wrong. He likely sees U-turns as pragmatic responses, flexible governance, responsive leadership, but that's not what the public sees. They see weakness, indecision, someone who doesn't know what he believes and changes his mind whenever opposition gets loud. They see exactly what Starmer once saw in Boris Johnson: serial incompetence, 13 U-turns, one damning tweet, and a prime minister destroyed by his own words. Sometimes the harshest judge isn't your opponents. It's your past self, holding you to standards you once believed in but abandoned for convenience. Starmer condemned 12 U-turns. He's committed 13, and his own words have become his conviction. Britain deserves leadership with courage to make difficult decisions and conviction to defend them. Instead, we have a prime minister who treats every policy as negotiable, every principle as optional, every commitment as conditional on polling numbers. 12 U-turns deserves one explanation: serial incompetence. 13 U-turns deserves one question: why is he still prime minister?